All right, let's dive into a philosophy that's pretty much designed to make you question, well, everything you think you know about truth, knowledge, and especially power. We're talking about postmodernism, and we're going to see it through the eyes of a thinker who completely changed the game, Michel Foucault.
It really all boils down to one simple but absolutely massive question. Who gets to decide what is true? I mean, is truth some objective thing out there that we just discover, or is it something that's built, constructed by the society we live in? This one question, it's the key that unlocks this whole way of thinking.
For a long time, especially during the age of modernism that grew out of the Enlightenment, the answer to that seemed super obvious. Modernism was all about this incredible promise of clarity, of order, and this idea that humanity was on a path of inevitable progress, all thanks to human reason and objective science.
At the very heart of modernism was this belief in what philosophers call a meta-narrative. And really, that's just a fancy way of saying a single grand story that explains everything for everyone. This story said that if we just used universal reason and science, we were on this guaranteed one-way street to a better future. It was a time filled with a whole lot of certainty.
But then, a group of thinkers came along and asked a pretty radical question. What if this grand story is just that, a story? What if there isn't one single universal truth, but instead, there are just lots of smaller, competing truths, lots of different perspectives? What if reality is way more messy and fragmented than we've been told?
And this is where the philosopher Jean-Francois Lyotard comes in. He absolutely nailed the essence of postmodernism with this one powerful phrase: incredulity towards meta-narratives. It just means having a deep, fundamental skepticism of any big story that claims it has all the answers for everybody.
And the contrast here is just, wow, it's night and day. Modernism says truth is objective and the same for everyone. Postmodernism says, nope, it's relative, it's built by our culture and our language. Modernism had its one big story of progress. Postmodernism shines a light on all the many smaller, competing stories. And maybe most importantly, while modernism saw power as this top-down thing, kings and governments, postmodernism reveals that it's actually hidden, spread out, and working on us from everywhere.
Okay, so that brings us to the main event, the French philosopher Michel Foucault. He took this idea of hidden power and came up with one of the most powerful and honestly most controversial ideas of the 20th century, the unbreakable link between knowledge and power.
Foucault basically told us we have to completely rethink what knowledge even is. For him, knowledge and power aren't separate things. They're totally tangled up together in what he called the knowledge-power nexus. He said that whatever a society decides as truth or fact is never, ever neutral. It's always a tool, and it's used to create norms, to define what's normal and what's not, and ultimately to control how people behave.
So how does this actually play out? Let's break it down. Step 1. A field of experts comes along, say modern psychiatry or criminology. Step 2. These experts use their special knowledge to create new boxes to put people in, labels like sane and insane, or lawful and delinquent. And then step 3, these very labels are used to justify creating new systems of control, like the mental asylum or the modern prison, to manage the people who've been put in those boxes. You see, knowledge doesn't just describe reality here, it actively creates it, and it creates systems of power right along with it.
But Foucault didn't stop there. It wasn't just about the what of power. He also completely changed our understanding of where to look for it. And he argued that for way too long, we've been looking in all the wrong places.
I mean, think about the classic, old-school view of power, right? It's a pyramid. You've got the king, the government, the elites at the very top, and they exercise power downwards on the rest of us. It's seen as this repressive force, something whose main job is to tell you, no, you can't do that.
Foucault just throws that whole model out the window. For him, power isn't a pyramid, it's a web. It's this diffuse network of relationships that runs through every single part of society. It's in the classroom, in the doctor's office, in your family, everywhere. And here's the kicker. This power isn't just about saying no. He says it's productive. It actually produces things. It shapes our desires, our identities, what we think is normal. Basically, it gets us to police ourselves without anyone even having to tell us to.
Okay, so this is all pretty mind-bending stuff, but why does it actually matter? What's the real-world takeaway? Well, Foucault's work basically gives us a whole new toolkit for deconstructing the world around us. It's a lens for looking past the obvious and really starting to question things we just take for granted.
So when you start to use this postmodern lens, you start doing things differently. You start challenging those official versions of history and asking, wait, whose story isn't being told here? You start questioning whether experts and institutions are really as neutral as they claim to be. You start to see how powerful labels and categories are in shaping our lives. And most of all, you begin to recognize that power is at its strongest when you don't even notice it's there, when it just feels like common sense.
And that kind of leaves us with a really challenging final thought. Because what Foucault shows us is that we aren't just the victims of power, we're also the vehicles for it. In our everyday conversations, in the norms we choose to follow or enforce, we are all active nodes in that web. So the question isn't just about some them out there, it's about us. If power really is everywhere, how are you using yours?